Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Venezuela Solidarity Campaign here in Britain's YouTube channel. I'm joined today by the Secretary of the campaign, Dr. Francisco Dominguez, to talk about something that we haven't covered recently, but something that people who follow our social media would have seen, which is the case of Alex Saab, which is something that's very important for Venezuela at the moment in terms of international relations, but also of growing importance, I think it'd be fair to say, to the solidarity movements and campaigns around the world. To start us off, Francisco, could you just tell people what this case is all about and what the significance of it is?
Yeah, thank you for this. Alex Saab was especially employed by the Venezuelan government led by President Maduro, who had been given the mission to do all sorts of things around the world to try to get especially food and medicine for the people of Venezuela because of the blockade that the country and the people have been subjected by the United States. He was in Cape Verde, in transit to Iran, and everything he was doing had absolutely nothing to do with the United States. So therefore, that's the first point to be made. Everything he was doing was not related to the United States at all in terms of jurisdiction, and nothing to do with the United States in terms of territorial authority, nothing at all. Nevertheless, the United States sanction regimes does not have legal or juridical validity anywhere else except in the United States. So therefore, it is incredible that the United States Justice Department, the Department of Justice, invented 8 charges of money laundering in order to justify everything else that led to his arrest. The arrest took place on the 20th of June 2020. This was illegal. This was made clear on at least 2 occasions by the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, which Cape Verde is a member of. And according to the protocol between the 2 nations, Cape Verde is supposed to respect and comply with decisions from ECOWAS. ECOWAS not only demonstrated that the Interpol red notice requesting his arrest was issued 1 day after he was detained. So ECOWAS demanded his release immediately, and it was not complied by Cape Verde authorities. And on the 8th of June, to confirm this, the United Nations Human Rights Committee issued a decision demanding that the extradition of Alex Saab, which was being processed, was suspended, and that he be given the necessary medical attention that was being denied to him. So that's what it was. Now, on the 16th of October 2021, he was taken, Alex Saab, by a special U.S. military force. And this was done without a court order or without any extradition treaty existing between Cape Verde and the United States. So, again, the United States trampled upon all the international law. And on that day, it's been reported that the normally 60-strong Cape Verdean military detachment outside the jail where he was being held was reduced to 1 soldier. What is interesting about this is that the U.S. military operation that took place to take him away on the 16th of October was 1 day before the presidential election was going to take place in Cape Verde, which actually brought to power a new politician called Jose Maria Neves, who is opposed to the U.S. treatment of Alex Saab and whose position was to actually, return Alex Saab. So that's why the United States organized this operation. And outside the territorial waters of Cape Verde, the United States anchored the Navy cruiser San Jacinto, and their argument was to make sure that Saab did not escape. Where is he going to escape in that island? So this is the overall situation. I think just one final point on this question. The basic reason why they wanted to detain Alex Saab was, one, to find out details of where he was getting medicine and food from, in order to ensure that they were able to completely stop that, in order to successfully asphyxiate the Venezuelan economy, in order to bring about the violent regime change of President Maduro. This is what it was.
Yeah, I think on that point there's a real humanitarian point to be made here, which is sort of outside which we'll come on to in a minute, which is the issues around international law and diplomacy and relations between states, which all look important. But the sort of the purpose of it, in terms of what the end game of it could only really be, from what you've described, to make the situation worse for people who are already suffering. And I think, therefore, maybe this is a good moment to sort of say a few words about the context at the time this happened, in terms of the international crisis and pandemic, and also where the blockade of Venezuela was at that point.
Well, the situation in Venezuela began to get better only perhaps this year, at the beginning of this year, partly of the end of last year. But from 2016 all the way to 2020, 2021, the situation was absolutely terrible. The information from the Venezuelan government was that because of the blockade, the US blockade against the country, then Venezuela lost 99% of the revenues that it used to get. And it was living literally, on more or less nothing. Everything was denied, everything was blockaded, food, medicine. Remember, the United States was prepared to go against a Mexican company who was selling food to Venezuela and was ready to go and bankrupt it, which it did, in order to ensure that the people of Venezuela did not get even food, because their expectation, their plan, was to drive people into such a level of despair that they will rise up in desperation, and then this will justify, some form of international intervention. So you can imagine, to trying to stop Alex Saab, find out the details of what he was doing, the sources of food, medicine, and everything else that was absolutely essential and vital for the people of Venezuela, was, from their point of view, a strategic consideration. That's why they got him. And, they mistreated him terribly. As we know, he's been tortured. He was tortured. They, he lost some teeth. He was denied medical attention. He is a sufferer of cancer. The worst possible. And the whole idea was to break him down so that he would actually give the information extraordinarily. That's why he's a hero. He didn't give anything away, and he's still resisting. And now he's in Florida. But that was the context. The context was crush it as quickly as possible. We're absolutely fed up that this country continues to resist. And maybe this is the mechanism, the detention of Alex Saab and getting information out of him will help us to bring about that objective.
It seems, from what you're saying as well, that perhaps there's a broader significance to this case internationally, in terms of sort of setting a precedent and issues around international law.
Well, imagine if a special envoy of a country or special envoy of a government that is sent on a specific mission that is protected by international law, because any special envoy who has diplomatic passport, as Alex Saab did have at the time, then it should be respected. His diplomatic immunity should be respected by absolutely everyone. The precedent that this sets is the following: the United States is behaving increasingly like a rogue state. So therefore, if the government of the United States were to dislike any government or any action of any government anywhere in the world, regardless of who they might be, then no diplomat anywhere in the world will be safe, because the United States will just go against them in order to, extract information on military questions, economic questions, or anything else. So these flagrantly and terribly violate international law in the way that nobody else in the last, I would say, decades has done. Only the United States is doing this. So that's number one. Even if there is a case against any diplomat, which it is possible, I'm talking, in general, in generic terms, then there is due process. The due process is the person should be accused, charged, or accused by a proper court of law in a proper jurisdiction, so that the person has a defense lawyer, a solicitor, and all the procedure is followed, so that once this is done, then it might be possible to actually try somebody. In this case, no due process was respected. So therefore, the conclusion I'm drawing is not only the United States prepared to behave like a rogue state, violating international law in the way that they have done with Alex Saab, but is prepared not to follow any due process of any kind whatsoever. More importantly, right now, despite repeated requests, the United States Department of Justice has not produced any evidence and arguments, any documentation to justify what they're doing to Alex Saab, which they have now in Florida. And it shows the lengths to which the United States is prepared, or was prepared, let's hope that this changes, to destroy the Bolivarian Revolution. And I think also it sends a very strong message to anybody else in the world to say, if you do something we dislike, be very careful because this might happen to you. I think that's the significance of this. So it's terrible. What I'm disappointed about is the fact of the number of countries which are powerful enough, such as the European ones, including the UK government, who know that this is being done. And then they could have actually speak out and to say, listen, mate, we agree with some of your objectives, but this is not the right thing to do because it's a flagrant violation of something which is very precious, not only to Venezuela, but to everybody else in the world.
And I suppose following on from that quickly, there's some hope, obviously, of some improvements, limited, of course, in relations between the US and Venezuela in light of the global situation around energy and other things. But presumably this is quite a big stumbling block for any advances on that score.
It seems clear that this is being discussed between the two governments now, that Biden is prepared to talk to the Venezuelan government and recognize Maduro de facto. I'm not privy to any details, no information has come out, but clearly Maduro stopped the dialogue with the sections of the opposition because Alex Saab was actually taken away. And therefore, more or less, the argument seems to be that unless he is released, then no dialogue can take place, with particularly the current that the United States wants Maduro to have dialogue with, which is the Guaido current, which is dwindling away as we speak every single minute. So that's an important thing. And more important that in terms of the legal evolution of the case, the judge, Robert Scola, actually has dropped 7 of the 8 charges of money laundering that he was accused of. So he's accused only of 1, but that one carries the maximum penalty of 20 years. But more importantly, it seems to me, and more positively, the United States de facto has recognized in writing that actually Alex Saab was a special envoy. Therefore, the only conclusion possible is that this must be sorted out legally so that they have to release him. There was going to be a hearing now, but it's been postponed for after the November elections in the United States. And I understand it's been set for December. So we might have some very important information in December. So that's what it is. And if I may add, given all the all the intricacies and all the details of the case, I think we must demand the immediate and unconditional release of Alex Saab because it's a matter of justice and he's a hero.
Thank you, Francisco. I think that covers most of what we need to raise. People can get more information about this case on articles on our website and elsewhere. Various international campaigns are operating on it, and watch this space as well for more campaigning initiatives. Our end. Thank you, Francisco.